When I was in high school, I discovered that there was an art department in the basement of my high school. And I started in the ceramic room, which is where they made pottery. And then I moved out here to go to graduate school. I started at UC Berkeley. Then I moved to San Jose State and graduated there. And while I was in that program, I was the lab technician at Cal State East Bay. And then I started teaching not long after that. There was a definite strong, I guess you could say even puritanic work ethic growing up in the Midwest. My dad loved farming, so it wasn't hard for him to get excited about getting up every day. Each one is hand-built. They are often a similar size, so sometimes it looks like I would be making them from a mold, but molds are actually in the way. I've learned to build quickly and efficiently enough that hand building is actually the best way. This series started 14 years ago. I've been working this subject for 14 years. My grandson was born 14 years ago, so that's no coincidence. The only time I had any peace in those days was when he was asleep. And I couldn't help but notice that when he was asleep, his face resembled a Buddha. Working with a generation of people now that have grown up with a screen in front of them from birth is way different than people from my generation. So they're much more easily distracted, tend to be more clumsy actually with their hands because there's certain, I teach motor skills, I teach body mechanics and timing and stuff like that that has to do with the physical world, like a coach would if I was teaching them archery or something like that. I start at more of a basic, almost remedial level of actual physicality with people.
When I first started using clay, it felt really gross. I thought it was really cold and it was like I was playing with mud. But then I got used to it and I started liking it because it was like any other art form, you don't get to be messy. It's because either the white paper will get messed up or something like that. But with clay, it's you could slap the clay around and it would be fine. And I really enjoyed that part. He's very accepting and supportive, really amazing at everything that he did. He joked around a lot, so if people can joke around, it's really easy to connect with them.
One of the most coveted things in the art world is not talent, it's discipline. So he's got some of the more discipline that I've ever known. There's something cool about his process too, where by working in clay, he's got a time element on it where it dries out. Or he's got a specific window where whatever he's doing, it needs to set, it needs to dry, it needs to be at another place where he can carve it. So one of the things that I admire about his the medium that he's working with is this time element. So it's almost like he has to work on it or it'll dry out, where I can let a painting sit for years. He started doing these owls, and it might have been inspired by my owl painting.
Yeah,
Or do you-
definitely.
Okay, so I did a little owl painting years ago, worked on a Smithsonian project. It had little hands on it. And then all of a sudden he starts doing these owl sculptures that I just loved. And the first one he did, I'm like, I'll trade you for that. And he goes, well, it's in a show. And if it doesn't get in the show, let's talk. And I'm like, I hope it doesn't get in the show. I hope it doesn't sell. Burning sage, a helper plant, like it's just universal. And so we're always burning sage. He has a sage plant in the back of his yard, so there's a huge pile of sage right there. And like when I have a painting and it's wet, I'll burn sage into the wet paint so that that energy, which is very kind of unifying and balancing, goes right into the painting. But also when his sculptures are sitting in the studio and if they're wet and I'm walking by, I'll smudge down his sculptures. You know, I'll put sage right into the owl's eyes, and then that sage goes right into that molecular system of that clay piece. I also say we're guardian angels for each other. It's obvious, like, you know, here I am at the studio because of him. I'm teaching at Chabot because of him. You know, my friends show up by his sculptures. You know, it's obviously an old soul connection. True brother.